The smell of cinnamon and fresh dough filled the little bakery that morning. It was the kind of scent that usually made Claire Benson smile, but not today. The air felt heavier, quieter, almost like the world was holding its breath. 31 years old, petite, with chestnut hair tied in a loose braid. Claire moved slowly behind the counter. Her belly, 6 months pregnant, showed gently beneath her soft blue dress. She brushed flour from her hands, adjusted the pastries in the display case, trying to ignore the unease twisting inside her chest. The bell above the door chimed. She turned, expecting a customer. But it was Ryan Benson, tall, broad shoulders under a gray work jacket, a face once full of warmth, now cold and distant. He stepped inside, eyes dark and unreadable. Claire smiled weakly. "You're home early," she said, voice uncertain. He didn't smile back, didn't move closer. Just exhaled slowly and said, "Claire, we need to talk." Those words made her blood run cold. She set the pastry tray down, heart hammering. "What is it, Ryan?" she whispered. His jaw tightened. "It's about Jessica." Her mind froze. Jessica Cole, her best friend since college, tall, confident, always the center of attention with her golden hair and quick laugh. The kind of friend who helped decorate the bakery before it opened, who toasted their wedding with tears in her eyes. Claire forced a small laugh. "Jessica? What about her?" Ryan's eyes dropped to the floor. "I'm in love with her." The world stopped. The refrigerator hummed behind her, the patter of rain against the glass. Everything faded to silence. Claire blinked. "What did you just say?" she asked, her voice cracking. He shoved his hands into his pockets, unable to meet her eyes. "It just happened," he said quickly. "You've changed, Claire. Things aren't the same. Jessica, she understands me." Claire's heart twisted so sharply it hurt to breathe. "Changed?" she repeated, her voice trembling. "I'm carrying your child, Ryan." He scoffed, looking away. "Exactly. That's all you care about now. The baby. Not me." For a long moment, she couldn't move, couldn't think. Then the laughter came. Quiet, broken. "You're leaving me? For my best friend?" He turned toward the door. "I'm sorry," he muttered, but his tone was empty. As he stepped outside, the bell rang again, a soft, final sound, like the closing of a chapter. Claire stood frozen behind the counter. The tears wouldn't come yet, only the numbness. Then the door opened again, and a man's voice broke the silence. "Claire?" She turned. Ethan Miller stood there, camera slung over his shoulder, 33. Tall, with dark hair, worn jeans, and a denim jacket faded by years of travel. His eyes, green, steady, held quiet concern. He had grown up in this town but left long ago to photograph the northern wild. He took one look at her pale face, the way her hands shook, and gently turned the bakery sign to closed. "Hey," he said softly. "You okay?" She tried to speak, but the words wouldn't form. He moved closer, slow and careful, guiding her to a chair. The silence stretched, only the sound of rain outside. Then finally, her voice came, low and shaking. "He left. For her." Ethan's jaw tightened, but his tone was calm. "Then he wasn't the man you thought he was." Her eyes lifted to his, wet with disbelief. For the first time, she saw not just an old friend, but someone who understood loss too well. Outside, the rain deepened to a soft, steady rhythm. Inside, the scent of cinnamon lingered, warm, bittersweet, marking the morning when everything she believed in fell apart. The rain didn't stop for 3 days. It poured endlessly across the Oregon coast, washing away the chalk sign outside Sweet Haven. The words, "baked with love," faded into gray streaks. Inside the small house above the bakery, Claire Benson sat by the window. A cup of tea had gone cold in her hands. She hadn't touched food since that morning Ryan left. Her eyes were dull, the quiet kind of broken that doesn't make sound. Her mother, Helen Benson, moved softly behind her. 61 years old, silver hair tied neatly in a bun, her hands worn but gentle. Helen had survived the loss of her own husband years ago, and now, seeing her daughter in that same silence, tore at her heart. She placed a plate of toast on the table. "Sweetheart, you have to eat," Helen said quietly. Her voice trembled with both strength and fear. "The baby needs you." Claire looked up slowly. Her lips parted, but only a whisper came out. "I don't know how to do this alone, Mom." Helen sat down beside her, fingers brushing away a strand of hair from Claire's face. "You already are," she said softly. "Every breath you take, every tear you shed, that's proof you're still fighting." The words hung in the air, like a small flame in a cold room. That night, the house was silent. Claire stood in the nursery that once made her smile. Pale yellow walls, half-assembled crib, soft toys waiting for a child who hadn't yet seen the world. She ran her hand along the edge of the crib, her other hand resting on her belly. The tears came quietly this time. No sobs, just the slow, steady kind that taste like exhaustion. "I'll protect you," she whispered to her unborn daughter. "No matter what, I promise." The next morning, sunlight broke through the rain clouds. Claire walked back to the bakery for the first time in days. The place felt frozen in time, bags of flour stacked neatly, cookies left half-finished on the counter. She breathed in the faint scent of sugar and cinnamon, and felt something stir. Not hope yet, but the memory of it. When she turned the sign to open, the bell jingled softly, a small sound, but to her it was a heartbeat. She started wiping the counters, one by one, sweeping the floor, rearranging the muffins that had gone stale. Her movements were mechanical at first, then steadier, then stronger, and when the door opened again, she looked up. Ethan Miller stood there, camera hanging from his neck, a soft smile on his face. He was wearing that same worn denim jacket, damp from the rain. "Morning," he said quietly. "I was hoping you'd open today." Claire blinked, surprised. Her voice was faint. "I didn't think anyone would come." Ethan chuckled softly. "Well, someone has to take pictures of your first comeback." He lifted his camera, but didn't take the shot. Instead, he said gently, "You okay?" Claire hesitated, then nodded. "I will be." It wasn't true yet, but for the first time, it sounded possible. Outside, the rain finally stopped. The smell of sea air drifted in through the door, and as she set a tray of fresh bread by the window, the morning light landed on her face, tired but alive. That was the day. Sweet Haven came back to life. The morning sun crept through the curtains, painting soft golden lines across the bakery walls. For the first time in weeks, Sweet Haven smelled like home again. Warm bread, vanilla, a hint of cinnamon that clung to the air like comfort. Claire stood by the counter, her hair pulled into a neat ponytail, cheeks faintly flushed from the oven's heat. Her belly, now round and heavy, pressed gently against her apron. Each move she made was careful, slow, but steady. Her eyes, once hollow, had a quiet spark again. Ethan Miller leaned against the doorway, camera hanging loosely at his side. He had become a morning regular, claiming he came for the muffins, though everyone in town knew he didn't even like sweets. Tall, broad-shouldered, his dark hair always messy from the coastal wind. Ethan had the kind of smile that could melt the chill out of the Oregon fog. "Those smell amazing," he said with an easy grin. Claire smiled faintly, brushing sugar from her fingertips. "Chocolate chip scones, my mom's recipe." Ethan tilted his head. Your mom's got good taste. She does, Claire said softly, then paused. She's been through a lot. She deserves something sweet. Helen entered just then, wiping her hands on her floral apron. She gave Ethan a knowing glance, the kind mothers save for people who show up too often to be just friends. Morning, Ethan, she said, her voice kind but teasing. Back again? He grinned. Someone's got to make sure these scones are world class. Helen chuckled and left them to their quiet rhythm. It had become their routine, Claire baking, Ethan talking about the world outside, about mountains and frozen lakes in Alaska. Stories that pulled her mind far from the ache of her past, and somewhere between batches of bread and shared laughter, she found herself healing. But one night, everything changed. It was just past midnight when the first contraction hit. Claire gasped, clutching the counter. The pain rolled through her body like a wave. "Mom!" she called out, her voice trembling. Helen rushed in, eyes wide with alarm. "It's time, isn't it?" Claire nodded, breath quick and shallow. "It's too soon. She's not due for another month." Before Helen could answer, headlights flashed outside, the sound of a car pulling up fast. Then Ethan burst through the door, out of breath, still in his jacket. "I saw your light on," he said, scanning her face. "What's wrong?" "Baby," Claire managed to say through clenched teeth. Without hesitation, Ethan stepped forward. "Let's go." He helped her into his truck, Helen following close behind. The storm outside was fierce again, sheets of rain hitting the windshield as Ethan drove toward the hospital. Claire gripped his arm between contractions. "I'm scared," she whispered. Ethan looked at her briefly, eyes steady on the road. "You've got this. You're the strongest person I know." Hours blurred together, pain, sweat, tears, and then a cry. A single perfect sound that filled the sterile hospital room like music. Claire lay back, exhausted, tears rolling down her cheeks. The nurse handed her a tiny bundle wrapped in soft white cloth. A small face, a button nose, and the tiniest hand that reached for her finger. Her heart broke and healed all at once. "Emma," she whispered. "Your name is Emma." Ethan stood near the doorway, watching quietly, his face soft, eyes shining. He didn't speak. He just smiled. The kind of smile that said everything words couldn't. Later, as dawn broke, Helen sat beside her daughter's bed, holding her hand. Claire looked down at the sleeping baby on her chest, and for the first time in months, she felt peace. The betrayal, the loneliness, the fear, it was all still there, but somehow smaller, because now she had something bigger than all of it: love, hope, and a reason to keep going. 2 years passed, and Sweet Haven had become the heart of seaside Oregon. Tourists came for the pastries, locals stayed for the warmth. Each morning the smell of fresh bread spilled into the streets like sunlight. Claire Benson, now 33, hair shorter, eyes steadier, moved with quiet grace behind the counter. Her little girl, Emma, toddled between the tables with a toy whisk, laughing as customers waved. Ethan Miller sat by the window most mornings, camera resting on the table beside his coffee. He'd built a life that somehow revolved around the rhythm of the bakery: photos, travel articles, the occasional gallery showing in Portland. But every time he came back home, it was Claire and Emma who made the place feel alive. He didn't say it out loud, but everyone could see it, the way he looked at her, like she was the sunrise he'd been chasing all his life. That afternoon, the autumn wind picked up, rattling the sign outside. Claire was cleaning up when the doorbell jingled softly. A woman stepped in. Thin, pale, her once perfect hair tangled by the wind. Claire froze. Jessica Cole. The name hit her chest like a sudden echo. Jessica looked older, her blue eyes red from crying. Her tailored coat hung loose, and her hands trembled as she clutched her purse. "Claire," she began, voice small, cracked. I didn't know where else to go. Claire's breath caught. For 2 years, she had imagined this moment, all the things she'd say, anger, closure. But standing here now, she just felt tired. Jessica took a step forward. Ryan's gone, she said, tears spilling down her cheeks. After we left, things fell apart. He lost his job, started drinking, and then one night, he just walked out. I haven't seen him since. Her words tumbled out in a rush. I was wrong, Claire. So wrong. You didn't deserve what I did. I destroyed everything. The bakery grew quiet. Even the air seemed to hold still. Claire looked at her. This woman who'd once been her best friend. The woman who'd taken everything and ended up with nothing. Jessica sank into a chair, sobbing softly. I don't expect forgiveness, she said, voice shaking. I just needed to tell you. For a long moment, Claire said nothing. Then she wiped her hands on her apron and whispered, You already did. Jessica looked up, confused. Claire's voice softened. You told me who you were, and I believed you. That was enough. She turned toward the counter, heart pounding but steady. I don't hate you, Jessica, she said finally. I just don't need you in my life anymore. Jessica nodded slowly, tears falling like ash. When she left, the bell above the door jingled softly. The same sound Claire had once feared, now peaceful. That evening, as Claire locked up, the wind carried the faint smell of sea salt and rain. She stepped outside, letting the breeze cool her face. The clouds glowed faintly pink in the dying light. Ethan approached from across the street, camera strap slung over his shoulder. You okay? He asked quietly. Claire hesitated, then smiled, small but real. Yeah, I think I am. He looked at her for a long moment, then handed her a photograph. It was of Emma, standing in the bakery doorway, sunlight wrapping her like a halo. She reminds me of you, he said. Strong, bright, full of life. Claire felt her throat tighten, her eyes warm. Thank you, she whispered. They stood in silence, the kind that didn't need to be filled. For the first time since Ryan left, Claire felt the past release its hold. The ghosts were gone, and what remained was peace. The first Saturday of October brought sunlight and laughter to Seaside. Along Main Street, colorful banners fluttered in the breeze. The smell of caramel, apples, and warm bread drifted through the air. The town was alive with music, chatter, and the soft hum of community. It was the annual Sweet Haven Festival, named after Claire Benson's bakery, the place that had once saved itself, and somehow saved the people around it too. Claire stood by her booth, arranging rows of sugar-dusted pastries. Her hair, now a little shorter, curled gently against her neck. She wore a simple cream dress and an apron embroidered with a small golden heart, Ethan's design. Beside her, Emma giggled, her tiny hands covered in frosting as she tried to help. Careful, sweetheart, Claire laughed softly. We need to sell those, not eat them all. Emma grinned, her blue eyes, so much like her father's yet somehow softer, sparkling with mischief. A few feet away, Ethan Miller adjusted his camera tripod. He wore a crisp white shirt rolled at the sleeves, jeans, and that familiar calm smile. He was there not as a customer, but as the official photographer for the town's festival, an honor he'd quietly earned through years of capturing life as it really was, imperfect, raw, and full of heart. As he snapped photos of Claire laughing with Emma, something inside him softened. She didn't notice his gaze, but he didn't need her to. She was already everything he saw through his lens, resilience made beautiful. The mayor took the stage around noon, microphone crackling as the crowd gathered. This year, he announced, we're celebrating a story of strength, kindness, and the power of starting over. Please welcome the woman who turned her heartbreak into hope, Claire Benson. The crowd erupted in cheers. Claire froze for a second, her cheeks flushing pink. Ethan gave her a reassuring nod from behind the camera. "Go on," he mouthed. Taking a breath, she stepped up to the small wooden stage. The sea breeze caught the hem of her dress as she looked out over familiar faces, neighbors, friends, even strangers who had become part of her journey. I don't know what to say," she began, voice trembling slightly. "I used to think my life ended the day I was left behind. But maybe it just began again in a different way." The crowd grew quiet. Claire smiled faintly, her eyes glistening. "When I opened Sweet Haven, I didn't know it would become what it is now. I just needed to survive. But somehow, in the middle of all that pain, I found community and friendship and love." She glanced at Ethan. For a moment, their eyes met. It was quiet, unspoken. But the whole town could feel the weight of it. Applause broke out, warm and loud, echoing down the street. Ethan raised his camera and caught that moment. Claire standing in the sunlight, Emma clutching her skirt, wind playing in her hair. The photo would later hang in his gallery in Portland, under the title, "The Woman Who Rebuilt Her World." As evening fell, fairy lights flickered across the square. The bakery booth had long sold out, and the band began to play slow, gentle music. Claire sat on a bench, watching Emma dance in circles with the other children, laughter spilling into the night. Ethan joined her, handing her a cup of hot cider. "You did good today," he said quietly. Claire smiled, wrapping her hands around the cup. "We did." They sat there in the glow of the lights, two people who had walked through fire and somehow found warmth again. And when Ethan reached for her hand, she didn't pull away. Not this time. The wind from the ocean carried the faint sound of the waves, and above it all, the bell from Sweet Haven chimed softly, like a heartbeat in the dark. Morning sunlight spilled through the tall windows of the new Sweet Haven Cafe. Bigger now, brighter, a space built not from ambition, but from healing. The walls glowed a soft cream, the counters shone with fresh oak, and along the back wall a mural of the Oregon Sea, painted in shades of blue and hope. Claire Benson, 35 years old now, moved gracefully behind the counter. Her hair fell loose around her shoulders, a soft streak of silver catching the light. There was calm in her eyes, peace earned the hard way. Her silver wedding band, simple, unpretentious, glimmered as she wiped a bit of flour from her cheek. The bell above the door jingled. "Mommy, look what I made!" A little girl ran across the cafe, curls bouncing, tiny shoes squeaking against the floor. Emma, 3 years old, full of laughter that filled every corner of the room. She wore a child-sized apron with her name embroidered across the front, and held up a cookie shaped like a heart, icing smeared across her fingers. Claire knelt down, smiling softly. "That's beautiful, sweetheart," she whispered, kissing her forehead. "You've got the baker's touch already." The door opened again, and in walked Ethan Miller. He carried a tray of framed photographs under one arm, his shirt sleeves rolled to his elbows, his jeans dusty from helping finish the new sign outside. The sign read, "Sweet Haven, Fresh Bread, Forgiven Hearts." He looked at the two of them, and for a moment, he just stood there, watching quietly. Then, with that easy grin of his, he said, "You two look like trouble." Emma squealed with delight. "Daddy, I made cookies!" Ethan laughed, scooping her into his arms. "You did? Well, that explains the missing frosting." She giggled, resting her head against his shoulder. Claire leaned on the counter, watching them. Her heart swelled with the kind of quiet gratitude words could never hold. She smiled. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" Ethan's eyes softened. "Yeah," he murmured, "and every step was worth it." The bell rang again, and in walked Helen Benson, carrying a bouquet of wildflowers. Her hair was silver now, her walk slower but full of grace. "You two make this place feel like spring," she said, warmly. "I'm proud of you, Claire. Of both of you." Claire hugged her mother tightly. "Couldn't have done it without you, Mom." The cafe buzzed with laughter, the soft hiss of espresso, the chatter of neighbors who'd become family. People didn't just come for pastries anymore. They came for what the place represented: forgiveness, beginnings, home. Later that afternoon, Ethan unveiled his new wall display, rows of framed photographs. The first, an old shot of Claire standing in front of her tiny bakery after the rain, eyes red but brave. The last, a picture of the three of them, Claire, Ethan, and Emma, covered in flour, laughing beneath the new sign. When the crowd applauded, Claire turned to Ethan, her eyes shimmering. "You captured everything," she said softly. He smiled. "No, you built everything." As the day faded, golden light spilled across the tables. Outside, Emma chased Bubbles in the courtyard, her laughter echoing through the doorway. Claire stood beside Ethan, leaning gently into his shoulder. "You ever think about what life might have been if none of it had happened?" he asked quietly. Claire looked out at her daughter, the bakery, the setting sun. "Sometimes," she said, "but then I see her, and you, and I realize I'd still choose this. Every single time." Ethan smiled, brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Then here's to choosing again," he whispered. They stood there in the doorway, framed in the soft orange light. 3 hearts, 1 home. Outside, the ocean wind carried the scent of bread and salt, and above the door, the little silver bell chimed once, steady, gentle, endless.